The stars shined cold and distant as the massive black ships moved through space like dark shadows. Each ship was longer than a city and covered in metal that seemed to eat light itself. They moved in perfect lines, dozens of them, heading toward the blue-green world that spun slowly in the darkness ahead. On the planet below, alarms rang out across every city. The blue-skinned people called Zephyrians ran through their streets, some crying, others just standing still and staring at the sky. They all knew what those ships meant. Everyone in the galaxy knew what those ships meant. The Vextai had come. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his homeworld's defense station. His blue hands shook as he watched the enemy ships get closer on his screens. He had trained his whole life for this moment, but now that it was here, he felt like a child again. The defense grid that his people had built over 50 years was the strongest in their part of the galaxy. It had cannons that could destroy moons and shields that could stop anything, but it would not be enough. It was never enough against the Vextai. "Sir," said one of his officers, her voice small and scared. "They are sending a message." "Put it on screen," Veltar said. Even though he already knew what it would say, the screen filled with the image of a Vextai warrior. Half of its face was still flesh, gray and scarred. The other half was black metal with a red eye that glowed like a burning coal. Tubes and wires ran under its skin, making it look more like a machine than a living thing. This was War Prime Kethver, the one who had destroyed 17 worlds in the last year alone. "People of Kepler 442b," the Vextai said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "I am War Prime Kethver of the Vextai Empire. Your world has been chosen for integration into our domain. You have 3 choices: submit and serve us, fight and die, or do nothing and be consumed. You have one of your hours to decide." The screen went dark. Veltar closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Some were young and still believed they could fight. Others were old enough to know better. They had all heard the stories from other worlds. The Vextai had been conquering the galaxy for 3,000 years. No one had ever beaten them. No one had even slowed them down for very long. The Vextai were not just strong. They were perfect at war. They could change their bodies to fight better. They could make their skin harder than steel or their bones stronger than diamond. Their ships could fix themselves during battle. Their weapons could learn how to beat any defense. They studied every enemy and found every weakness, and they never stopped, ever. "Sir," another officer said, "the council is calling. They want to know what we should do." Veltar knew what the council would choose. They would choose what every other world had chosen when faced with the same decision. They would submit. They would hand over their children to be turned into workers. They would give up their freedom to stay alive, because the other choice was to fight and watch everyone they loved die. "Open a channel to the planet," Veltar said quietly. "Channel open, sir." "This is Commander Veltar of Defense Station Alpha. I am ordering all ships to stand down. Do not engage the enemy." "Repeat, do not engage the enemy." His voice broke a little as he said the words. All civilian populations should remain in their homes and wait for further instructions. Some of his younger officers stared at him in shock. One of them, a lieutenant named Kellenin, stepped forward. "Sir, we can't just give up. We have the best defense grid in the sector. We can make them pay for every inch they take." Veltar looked at the young officer with sad eyes. "Lieutenant, how many worlds have the Vextai conquered?" I don't know the exact number, sir. Over 12,000. "Do you know how many of those worlds successfully defended themselves?" Kellenin's shoulders dropped. "None, sir." "None," Veltar repeated. "The smartest military minds in the galaxy have tried to beat them. The strongest fleets have tried to stop them. The best technology has tried to match them. They all failed. We will not be different." On the main screen, they could see the Vextai ships getting closer. Some were as big as mountains. Others were smaller but moved so fast they looked like black lightning. All of them carried weapons that could crack. A planet opened like an egg. The Zephyrian defense ships were already moving away from the enemy fleet. Their captains knew what the orders meant, even if they hated following them. A few ships hesitated, their crews wanting to fight even if it meant dying. But in the end, they all pulled back. The Vextai ships reached the planet's orbital zone and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the largest ship, a monster the size of a small moon, began to glow. Beams of red light shot out from it and hit the defense stations one by one, but the beams did not destroy them. Instead, they seemed to study them, learning how they worked and how to control them. Within minutes, every defense station in the system was under Vextai control. The weapons that had been built to protect the planet were now pointing at it. "Message coming in from the surface," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." The voice of High Counselor Murthan filled the bridge. He sounded old and tired, like a man who had already died inside. "This is High Counselor Murthan of the Zephyrian Confederation. We accept the terms of the Vextai Empire. We submit to your rule. Please do not harm our people." War Prime Kethver's image appeared on screen again. This time he almost looked amused. "Wise choice," he said. "Prepare your world for landing. All military personnel will report to designated areas for processing. All government officials will remain at their posts until they can be replaced. All civilians will continue their normal activities until told otherwise." The screen went dark. Again, around Veltar, his officers stood in silence. Some were crying, others just stared at nothing. They had spent their lives preparing to defend their world, and now they were watching it be given away without a shot being fired. But Veltar had heard something in the Vextai commander's voice that worried him. When Kethver had spoken before, he had sounded bored, like this was just another routine conquest. But at the end, he had mentioned something about new intelligence reports. Something about ships being seen in the outer systems that did not belong to any known species. As the first Vextai landing ships began their descent toward the planet's surface, Veltar pulled up the latest deep space sensor readings on his personal screen. There, in the data from 3 days ago, he found what had caught the Vextai's attention. Unknown ships had been detected near the edge of their space. The ships were crude-looking, built from what appeared to be scraps and spare parts. But they were fast, and they were moving in formation like they belonged to some kind of military force. The computer had identified the origin of the ships based on their engine signatures. They came from a system called Sol, from the third planet in that system. The beings who lived there called themselves humans. Veltar had never heard of them before. But apparently neither had the Vextai, and that was unusual. The Vextai knew about every species in the galaxy. They made sure of it. As he watched the alien ships land on his world and begin the process of turning his people into slaves, Veltar wondered about these humans. Were they just another species that would soon bow before the might of the Vextai Empire? Or were they something different? He would not live long enough to find out. But somewhere in his heart, he hoped that these humans, whoever they were, would be the ones to finally make the Vextai pay for what they had done to the galaxy. The conquest of Kepler 442b was complete in less than 6 hours. Just like always, but for the first time in 3,000 years, the Vextai were asking questions about an enemy they had not yet met. 3 weeks after the fall of Kepler 442b, War Prime Kethver stood in his command chamber studying reports that made no sense. The metal tubes under his skin pulsed with electric current as his mind processed the data over and over again. Something was wrong with the galaxy. Something new had entered their space, and it was behaving in ways that violated everything the Vextai understood about how wars should work. The humans had finally shown themselves. Sub-Commander Thekaral entered the chamber with quick steps, his mechanical arm whirring as he saluted. Half of his face was covered in living metal that glowed with soft blue light. The other half looked worried. "War Prime, the scouting force has returned from the Sol system." "How many ships did we lose?" Kethver asked without looking up from his data screens. 7 out of 12, sir." Kethver's red eyes snapped up to stare at his second-in-command. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vextai had never lost more than 1 or 2 ships to a first contact mission. The species they Encountered usually ran away or tried to surrender before any real fighting began. Explain. Vekaral activated a hologram in the center of the room. It showed the battle that had taken place near an asteroid field in human space. Kethver watched as his ships, sleek and deadly, moved toward a small group of human vessels. The human ships looked like junk. They were made of welded metal plates and had weapons bolted on wherever there was room. Some appeared to be old cargo ships that had been turned into fighting vessels. Others looked like they had been built from the wreckage of other ships. None of them should have been able to fight a Vextai patrol, but as Kethver watched the recording, the humans did something no other species had ever done. They attacked first. Computer, replay from Mark 774. He ordered. The hologram showed the moment when the human fleet suddenly changed course and charged straight at the Vextai ships. Instead of trying to run or forming defensive positions, they split into small groups and came at the Vextai from 6 different directions at once. The lead human ship was called the Indomitable, according to the computer. It was ugly and scarred, with guns sticking out of its hull like metal spines. But it moved like it was alive, dancing between asteroid chunks and using them as cover. "What is the tactical analysis?" Kethver asked. "The computer cannot understand their strategy, War Prime. They used their weakest ships as bait to draw our forces into the asteroid field. Then they attacked from multiple angles while their commander coordinated the assault from a position that should have been suicide." Kethver studied the human leader's ship more carefully. The woman commanding it was doing things that made no logical sense. She flew her vessel into positions where it could be destroyed easily, but somehow she always managed to escape at the last second. More importantly, every time she put herself in danger, her other ships fought harder. "Show me the boarding action." The hologram changed to show the inside of one of his ships. Vextai warriors, each one a perfect blend of flesh and machine, moved through the corridors to repel human boarders. The Vextai were faster, stronger, and better armed. They should have cut down the humans in seconds. Instead, Kethver watched his warriors get overwhelmed by creatures that fought like wild animals. The humans wore simple armor and carried basic weapons, but they moved together like they shared one mind. When one human fell, another immediately took his place. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their guns as clubs. When their clubs broke, they used their bare hands, but what disturbed Kethver most was the sound they made. Other species screamed in fear when they fought the Vextai. These humans made a different sound. They roared like beasts, but there was something else in their voices. They sounded happy. They sounded like they were enjoying the fight. "War Prime," Vekaral said quietly, "there is something else you should see." The hologram showed a human marine cornered by 3 Vextai warriors. The man was bleeding from several wounds and had lost his weapon. Any other species would have surrendered or tried to run. Instead, the human smiled, pulled out a small device, and spoke into it. "This is Sergeant Rodriguez. Tell my wife I love her and tell command that these bastards bleed just like everything else." Then he activated the device and exploded, taking all 3 Vextai with him. Kethver stared at the empty space where the human had been. In all his years of war, he had never seen anything like it. The human had not been trying to escape or even to win. He had simply been trying to kill as many enemies as possible before he died. "Analysis of human military doctrine?" Kethver asked. The computer's voice filled the chamber. "Unable to analyze? Human tactics violate all known principles of warfare. They sacrifice valuable resources for minimal tactical gain. They place their command personnel in positions of extreme danger. They use damaged equipment as weapons. They fight past the point of logical surrender." Assessment: humans are either insane or operating under completely unknown strategic principles. Kethver dismissed the hologram and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he had almost forgotten: uncertainty. "Sub-Commander, what do our allies in this sector report about the humans?" "That is the other problem, War Prime. The humans have been contacting other species and forming alliances. They are sharing technology and coordinating military actions. The Zephyrians have started showing signs of unrest since the humans began, broadcasting something they call freedom messages to occupied worlds. This was even more troubling. The Vextai maintained control over their empire by keeping subject species isolated and afraid. If the humans were bringing different species together and giving them hope, it could lead to rebellions across multiple star systems. Show me these freedom messages. A new hologram appeared, showing a human woman in a military uniform. She had brown skin and short black hair, and she looked directly at the camera when she spoke. People of the galaxy, my name is Captain Maria Santos of the United Earth Space Service. We know that many of you live under the boot of the Vextai Empire. We know you have been told that resistance is hopeless and that you must accept slavery to survive. We are here to tell you that this is a lie. The woman's voice was calm but strong. She did not sound afraid of the Vextai at all. The Vextai want you to believe they are invincible because fear is their greatest weapon. But we have fought them and we have made them bleed. They are not gods. They are not unstoppable. They are just another enemy, and enemies can be beaten. Behind her, the hologram showed human ships being built in massive space stations. Workers from dozens of different species labored side by side, building weapons and preparing for war. We are forming an alliance of free worlds. Any species that wants to join us will be welcomed as equals. We will share our technology, our knowledge, and our determination to never bow to tyranny. Together we can drive the Vextai back to whatever dark corner of space they came from. The message ended with coordinates for meeting points, where representatives of other species could make contact with the human fleet. Kethver turned away from the hologram. This was worse than he had thought. The humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were a threat to the entire structure of the Vextai Empire. Subcommander, prepare a full battle fleet. We will crush these humans before their rebellion can spread. Yes, War Prime. How many ships should we commit? Kethver thought for a moment. Every instinct told him to send overwhelming force, but something about the humans made him cautious. They had already proven they could adapt quickly to new situations. If he sent too many ships, they might find a way to capture Vextai technology and reverse engineer it. 50 ships. Heavy cruisers and battle platforms. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who resist the Vextai Empire. And our target? War Prime? Kethver studied the star charts on his screen. The humans had established a major military base in a system they called Thermopylae. According to intelligence reports, it was heavily fortified and served as a coordination center for their growing alliance. We will attack Thermopylae Station. Once we destroy their main base, the other species will remember why they fear us. As Zikaral left to prepare the fleet, Kethver remained at the window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the humans were preparing for war. They were building ships, training soldiers, and spreading their message of rebellion to every corner of the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the name Vextai had brought instant surrender from any species that heard it. But these humans seemed to think that names and reputations meant nothing. They believed that any enemy could be defeated if you were willing to pay the price in blood. Kethver's mechanical eye glowed brighter as he made a silent promise. He would teach these humans the same lesson he had taught every other species in the galaxy. The Vextai Empire was eternal. Resistance was futile, and those who defied them would be crushed without mercy. But deep in his mind, in the part that was still flesh and blood, a small voice whispered a question that he tried to ignore. What if the humans were right? What if the Vextai could be beaten? He pushed the thought away and began planning the destruction of Thermopylae Station. Soon, the galaxy would remember why they feared. Admiral Chenwei stood on the bridge of the massive space station that humans had named Thermopylae. Through the thick windows, he could see the construction crews working day and night to finish the defenses. Humans, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species worked together, welding armor plates and installing weapons that had never been tested in real battle. Chan was an old man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a ship engineer. He had built half the human fleet with those hands before being promoted to admiral. Now he was about to use everything he had learned in the biggest fight of his life. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kim, a young woman who had joined the fleet only 6 months ago, "long-range sensors are picking up the Vextai fleet? 50 ships, just like the intelligence report said?" Chun nodded and walked to the central command table. The hologram showed the enemy fleet moving toward them like a dark cloud. Each Vextai ship was a masterpiece of war technology, built to destroy planets and crush entire civilizations. Against them, the humans had one old space station and whatever ships they could gather from their new allies. "How long until they arrive?" Chun asked. 18 hours, sir." "Good. That gives us time to finish the preparations." Chun activated the station's communication system. "All hands, this is Admiral Chun. In 18 hours, the Vextai will arrive." Expecting to find another easy victory. Instead, they will find something they have never faced before. They will find humans who refuse to surrender and allies who have decided to stand and fight. Throughout the station, thousands of people stopped their work to listen. Human Marines checked their weapons one last time. Zephyrian engineers made final adjustments to the defense systems. Traders and miners who had never been soldiers before picked up guns and prepared to defend their freedom. "The Vextai think they know how wars work," Chun continued. "They think superior technology always wins. They think fear is stronger than hope. Today, we will teach them that they are wrong. Today, we will show the galaxy that the age of the Vextai Empire is over." As the Admiral finished his speech, Colonel James Morrison entered the bridge. Morrison was a big man with arms covered in tattoos and a face that looked like it had been through a dozen wars. He commanded the station's special forces, soldiers who specialized in the kind of fighting that happened when ships got close enough to board each other. "Admiral, my teens, are ready for the boarding operations," Morrison said in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "Good. Remember, Colonel, we are not just trying to win this battle. We are trying to send a message to every species in the galaxy. The Vextai can be beaten." Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant sight. "Don't worry, sir. By the time we are done with them, every Vextai in the galaxy will know that humans fight different than anyone else." Chun turned back to the tactical display. The plan they had developed was insane by any normal military standard. Instead of trying to defend the station from a distance, they were going to let the Vextai get close. Then they would turn the entire star system into a battlefield where human tactics could work better than Vextai technology. "Status report on the asteroid modifications?" Sean asked. "All completed, sir," reported Commander Jackson, the station's chief engineer. "We have hollowed out 47 asteroids and filled them with engines and explosives. They are positioned throughout the system and ready to move on your command." "And the drone swarms?" 3,000 combat drones deployed and hidden among the debris fields. Each one is programmed to attack independently if they lose contact with the command center. Chun smiled. The Vextai expected their enemies to fight like civilized armies with clear battle lines and predictable tactics. Instead, they were going to face controlled chaos on a scale that had never been tried before. The hours passed slowly as both sides prepared for battle. The Vextai fleet moved through space in perfect formation, their ships ready to unleash destruction on anything that challenged them. War Prime Kethver stood in his flagship's command center, studying the tactical displays with growing confusion. "Subcommander, what is the human fleet strength?" he asked. "Difficult to determine, War Prime. Our sensors show approximately 30 ships, but they are spread throughout the system in small groups. Some appear to be hiding behind asteroids or inside debris fields." Kethver frowned. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Civilized species gathered their fleets together and fought in organized formations. They did not scatter their forces and play hiding games like children. Analysis of their defensive strategy? Unknown, War Prime. They have made no attempt to establish a defensive perimeter around the station. Instead, their ships appear to be positioned for hit-and-run attacks. The computer cannot predict their battle plan. This troubled Kethver more than he wanted to admit. The Vextai had conquered thousands of worlds by studying their enemies and finding the logical weaknesses in their defenses. But the humans seemed to have no logical strategy at all. Begin the attack. All ships advanced to engagement range. The Vextai fleet moved forward like a wall of black metal and death. Their weapons charged with energy that could melt continents. Their shields activated to deflect any attack the humans might try. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. The first surprise came when the asteroids started moving. Dozens of chunks of rock that had seemed harmless suddenly lit up with engine fire and began racing toward the Vextai fleet at incredible speed. Evasive action! Kethver ordered, but it was too late. The first asteroid slammed into the side of a Vextai cruiser and exploded with the force of a nuclear bomb. The ship's shields held, but barely. Then the second wave hit. And the third. And the fourth. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. Chunks of rock the size of buildings came at the Vextai ships from every direction, each one packed with enough explosives to damage even their advanced armor. Return fire. Destroy those asteroids. Kethver commanded. The Vextai weapons began shooting down the incoming rocks, but for every one they destroyed, two more appeared. And while they were busy defending themselves, the human ships began their attack. Admiral Chun watched from Thermopylae Station as his plan unfolded exactly as he had hoped. The Vextai fleet was scattered and confused, trying to deal with threats coming from dozens of directions at once. Launch the drone swarms, he ordered. 3,000 small combat drones emerged from hiding places throughout the system. Each one was no bigger than a fighter craft, but they moved in coordinated groups that swarmed the Vextai ships like angry insects. The Vextai tried to shoot down the drones, but there were too many of them. While the big ships dealt with the small attackers, human warships moved in for close-range combat. Captain Maria Santos piloted her ship, the Indomitable, through the chaos of battle like she was dancing with death itself. Her vessel was still ugly and patched together, but it had been upgraded with weapons taken from captured Vextai ships. Target their command ship, she ordered her crew. If we can damage their flagship, it will hurt their coordination. The Indomitable charged straight at Kethver's massive command vessel, dodging energy beams and missile explosions. Santos flew her ship in patterns that should have been impossible, using the debris from destroyed asteroids as cover and the gravity of the nearby planet to change direction without using her engines. "Ma'am, we are taking heavy fire," reported her weapons officer. "Good. That means we have their attention. All power to forward guns. We are going to ram them if we have to." The Vextai flagship tried to bring its main weapons to bear on the approaching human ship, but Santos was too close and moving too fast. At the last second, she pulled up and fired everything she had into the enemy ship's command tower. The blast tore through the Vextai armor and caused explosions throughout their bridge section. For the first time in the battle, Kethver felt his ship shake under enemy fire. "Damage report," he demanded. "Forward shields down to 60%. Command and control systems offline on Deck 7 through 12. Hull breach in Section 4. Kethver stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. His perfect formation was broken. His ships were scattered across the system, each one fighting multiple enemies at once, and somehow the humans were coordinating it all without any apparent central command. Each ship seemed to know exactly what the others were doing, as if they shared one mind. "War Prime," his communications officer called out. "The humans are broadcasting on all channels." "Put it through." Colonel Morrison's voice filled the bridge. "Of every Vextai ship in the system. Attention Vextai fleet. This is Colonel James Morrison of the Human Special Forces. We have a message for you. Your empire ends here. Your reign of terror is over. And if any of you want to surrender, now would be a good time." The transmission was followed by something that chilled Kethver to his mechanical bones. Laughter. Human laughter coming from every ship in their fleet. They were not just fighting the most powerful military force in the galaxy, they were enjoying it. "Sir," the Corral said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We can regroup and attack with a larger force." Kethver's pride warred with his tactical sense. The Vextai had never... The news of the Vextai retreat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, slaves who had worked in silence for generations suddenly lifted their heads and whispered a word they had, almost forgotten. Hope. On Kepler 442b. Commander Veltar sat in his small apartment that the Vextai had assigned to him after taking over his world. The blue-skinned Zephyrian had spent the last months watching his people work in the mines that fed the Vextai war machine. But today, everything felt different. His communication device chimed with an incoming message. The signal was weak and hidden, but Veltar recognized the encryption codes. It was from the human resistance network that had been secretly growing throughout Vextai space. "People of all worlds," came the voice of Admiral Chunwei. "3 days ago, the Vextai fleet attacked our base at Thermopylae Station. They came with 50 ships, expecting easy victory. Instead, they found humans and their allies ready to fight. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the Vextai had lost 17 ships and were forced to retreat." Veltar's hands shook as he listened. The Vextai had retreated. The words seemed impossible, like saying that gravity had stopped working or that stars had decided to shine backward. "We know that many of you have lived under Vextai rule for years or even generations." Chion's voice continued. "We know you have been told that resistance is hopeless. But we are here to prove that wrong. The Vextai are not gods. They can be hurt, they can be beaten. And with your help, they can be driven from this galaxy forever." The message included detailed plans for a rebellion, along with weapon designs that could be built using common materials found on most worlds. More importantly, it included something that had been missing from the galaxy for 3,000 years, a real chance for freedom. Meanwhile, in the deepest part of Vextai space, the Hierarchy Council met in emergency session. The 5 most powerful Vextai leaders sat around a table made from the crystallized remains of their first conquered world. Each one was more machine than flesh, their bodies modified over centuries to achieve perfection in war. Supreme War Master Vorthak spoke first, his voice like the grinding of massive gears. "Explain to me how 50 ships failed to destroy a single human base." War Prime Kethver stood before the council, his mechanical eye dim with shame. "The humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They use tactics that violate all known principles of warfare. They sacrifice valuable resources for minimal gain. They coordinate attacks without central command. They seem to prefer death over surrender." "You speak of them as if they are some new form of life," said War Master Zelthan, her voice sharp as broken glass. "They are flesh and blood, just like all the others we have conquered. With respect, War Master, they are not like the others. When we board their ships, they fight with their bare hands if necessary. When we damage their vessels, they ram them into our hulls and detonate them. When we capture their people, they refuse to give us information even under torture." The council fell silent. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever shown such complete resistance to Vextai methods. "What do you recommend?" asked Supreme War Master Vorthak. "Full mobilization. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon in the Empire. We must crush the humans completely before their rebellion spreads further. And risk our other conquests? If we pull our forces from occupied systems, the subject species might rebel." Kethver's good eye met the Supreme War Master's gaze. "They are already rebelling. Since news of our defeat reached the outer systems, we have had uprisings on 14 worlds. The humans are coordinating these rebellions and providing weapons and tactical support. This was worse than anyone had imagined. The Vextai Empire was built on the idea that resistance was hopeless. If that idea died, the entire structure of their civilization would collapse." "Show me the rebel activity," ordered Vorthak, a hologram. Filled the chamber, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked worlds where rebellions had started. Yellow dots showed systems where Vextai forces were fighting increased resistance. Green dots marked worlds that remained fully under control. There were too many red and yellow dots. The humans have created something they call the Galactic Liberation Front, Kethfer explained. They are not trying to conquer territory for themselves. Instead, they help other species fight for their own freedom. They share technology, provide military advisors, and coordinate attacks across multiple systems. War Master Zalvex, the oldest member of the council, spoke for the first time. His voice was like ancient metal grinding against stone. In all our years of conquest, we have never faced anything like this. The humans are not trying to replace our empire with their own. They are trying to destroy the very concept of empire. Which is why they must be stopped, Vorthak said. Gather every ship we have. Recall all forces from non-essential systems. We will attack the human homeworld directly and end this rebellion at its source. But even as the Vextai planned their massive assault, the humans were preparing for the next phase of their war. In hidden bases throughout the galaxy, human military advisors worked with rebel forces to plan coordinated attacks. Colonel Morrison stood in a cave on the planet Zarian, looking at a group of beings that represented a dozen different species. Some were tall and thin like living trees. Others were short and covered in fur. A few looked almost human except for their extra arms or different colored skin. Listen up, Morrison said in the voice that had terrified Vextai warriors. In 72 hours, we are going to hit every Vextai supply depot in this sector at the same time. The goal is not to capture territory. The goal is to make them afraid to leave their main bases. A Zephyrian rebel named Coulter raised his hand. Colonel, our people have never fought like this before. We do not have the human ability to ignore death. Morrison smiled, and several of the aliens stepped back nervously. You do not need to ignore death, friend. You just need to remember that there are things worth dying for. Your children's freedom, your people's future, the right to live without fear. He activated a hologram that showed the battle plans. The humans will take the hardest targets. Your job is to hit the smaller bases and make sure the Vextai cannot coordinate their response. Remember, we are not trying to match them ship for ship or warrior for warrior. We are trying to make them fight our kind of war instead of theirs. Tall, insect-like being called a Velinary clicked its mandibles together. What if they bring their entire fleet to crush us? Then we scatter and regroup somewhere else, Morrison replied. The Vextai think in terms of decisive battles and total victory. We think in terms of making their lives miserable until they give up and go home. As the meeting ended and the rebels dispersed to their homeworlds, Morrison contacted Admiral Chun on a secure channel. Sir, the rebel cells are as ready as they will ever be. How are things on your end? Chun's image appeared on Morrison's communicator. The Admiral looked tired but determined. The Vextai are pulling ships from across their empire. Our intelligence suggests they are planning a massive assault on Earth itself. Good, let them come. We will be ready. Colonel, they are talking about bringing 800 ships, maybe more. That is more firepower than has ever been assembled in one place. Morrison's grin grew wider. Sir, do you remember what you told me when this whole thing started? You said the Vextai think superior technology always wins, but we know better. What do we know, Colonel? We know that the most important weapon in any war is not the biggest gun or the strongest ship. It is the willingness to keep fighting when any sane person would surrender. And humans, sir, have never been accused of being sane. On Earth, the birth world of humanity, massive preparations were underway. Every shipyard worked around the clock to build vessels that could carry the fight to the enemy. But these were not just human ships. Representatives from dozens of species worked alongside human engineers, creating a fleet that represented the combined hopes of every free world in the galaxy. The ships they built were strange and wonderful. Some combined human engineering with Zephyrian energy weapons. Others used Velinary stealth technology with human armor plating. A few were entirely new designs that no single species could have created alone, but the most important thing being built was not made of metal and circuits, it was an idea. The idea that no one had to bow to tyrants. The idea that freedom was worth any price. The idea that even the mightiest empire could fall if enough people stood up and said, no more. In deep space, the largest Vextai fleet ever assembled began its journey toward Earth. Supreme War Master Vorthak commanded the invasion personally, determined to end the human rebellion once and for all. But as his ships moved through the darkness, between stars, rebellions erupted on 50 worlds simultaneously. Vextai supply lines were cut. Communication networks were sabotaged. Entire sectors went dark as rebel forces struck with coordination that should have been impossible. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vextai Empire was fighting for its very survival. And at the center of it all, a small blue world, called Earth, prepared to host the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The humans had taught the galaxy how to fight back. Now they would learn if it was enough. The Sol system had never seen so many ships in one place. 800 Vextai vessels moved through space like a dark storm cloud, their black hulls drinking in the light of Earth's sun. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, carrying enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Supreme War Master Vorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Darkness, and watched the small blue world that had caused so much trouble for his empire. It looked peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans. But he knew that somewhere on that world, the humans were preparing for war. Long-range sensors show the human fleet, reported his tactical officer. Approximately 400 ships of various classes. Vorthak studied the display with satisfaction. The humans had gathered everything they could, but they were still outnumbered 2 to 1. More importantly, many of their ships were clearly built by other species who had joined their rebellion. The fleet looked like a collection of junk compared to the perfect uniformity of the Vextai Armada. Begin the assault. Target their fleet first, then bombard the planet until they surrender. But as the Vextai ships moved forward, something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not form battle lines or take defensive positions around their world. Instead, they scattered in all directions, breaking into small groups that spread throughout the solar system. "Sir," the tactical officer said with confusion, "the enemy fleet is dispersing. They appear to be abandoning their homeworld." Vorthak frowned. This was not how final battles were supposed to work. The humans should be desperately defending their most important planet, not running away from it. Track all enemy vessels. Do not let any escape. On the bridge of the UESS Liberation, Admiral Chunwei watched the Vextai fleet advance and smiled grimly. The humans had learned much from their previous battles with the enemy. They knew that fighting the Vextai in a traditional space battle was suicide, so they had decided not to fight traditionally at all. "All ships execute Plan Crazy Even," Chin ordered into his communicator dot throughout the solar system. Human ships began performing maneuvers that violated every rule of space warfare. Some dove toward the sun, using its gravity to slingshot around at incredible speeds. Others hid behind planets and moons, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A few even flew directly into the asteroid belt and disappeared among the floating rocks. "Colonel," Morrison's voice came over the communication system from his position aboard the assault ship Reaper's Edge. "Admiral, my teams are ready for boarding operations. Just get us close enough to their big ships." "Roger that, Colonel." "Remember, the goal is not to destroy their fleet. The goal is to make them understand that this war cannot be won." The first phase of the battle began when human ships emerged from behind Jupiter's moons and launched a surprise attack on the Vextai rear guard. The enemy had expected the humans to defend Earth directly, so they had not prepared for attacks coming from the outer planets. Captain Maria Santos, now commanding the heavy cruiser Defiance, led her squadron in a high-speed run against a group of Vextai battleships. Her ships had been modified with engines taken from a dozen different species, making them faster than anything the Vextai had ever faced. "All ships, Target their command and control systems, Santos ordered. We do not need to destroy them, we just need to make them deaf and blind. The human attack was like a swarm of angry bees hitting a giant. Each ship was small compared to the Vextai vessels, but they moved too fast to track and hit targets the enemy had not expected anyone to aim for, while the space battle raged. Something even more surprising was happening throughout the galaxy. On every world where the Vextai had left garrison forces, rebellions erupted simultaneously. The rebels had been waiting for this moment, when most of the Vextai fleet was far away fighting humans. On Kepler 442b, Commander Veltar led a group of Zephyrian workers in an assault on the main Vextai command center. They carried weapons that human engineers had taught them to build from mining equipment and communication devices that let them coordinate with rebels on 50 other worlds. For 3,000 years we have lived in fear, Veltar shouted as his people charged through the corridors of their former government building. Today we take our world back. The Vextai garrison was caught completely off guard. They had grown comfortable ruling through fear and had not expected their slaves to suddenly develop the courage to fight back. Within hours, the Zephyrians had captured every major facility on their planet. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had not fought back in generations suddenly found themselves capable of incredible bravery. The human example had shown them that even the most powerful empire could be resisted. Back in the Sol system, the battle was reaching its climax. The Vextai fleet had managed to destroy several human ships, but they were taking far more damage than they had expected. Worse, they could not pin down the human fleet long enough to deliver a decisive blow. Supreme, War Master Vorthak found himself fighting a battle unlike any in Vextai history. His perfectly organized fleet was being torn apart by enemies who refused to fight by any recognizable rules. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving surrender offers from 43 star systems. The garrisons are requesting immediate reinforcement. Impossible. Our garrisons are more than capable of handling any rebellion. The reports indicate coordinated attacks by multiple species working together. They are using human tactics and human weapons. Vorthak felt something cold settle in his chest. The humans had not just been fighting for their own freedom. They had been teaching the entire galaxy how to resist. Continue the assault, he ordered. Once we destroy Earth, the rebellions will collapse. But Colonel Morrison had other plans. While the main battle raged in space, his special forces had been preparing for the most dangerous mission of the war. Using small stealth ships, they approached the Vextai flagship and prepared to board it. Remember, Morrison told his team as they suited up for battle, we are not here to destroy their ship. We are here to capture their leader and end this war. The boarding action was brutal and swift. Human Marines moved through the corridors of the eternal darkness like they owned the place, fighting with a combination of advanced tactics and pure determination that overwhelmed the Vextai defenders. Morrison himself led the assault on the bridge, his team cutting through Vextai warriors like they were made of paper. When they reached the command center, they found Supreme War Master Vorthak waiting for them with his personal guard. So, Vorthak said, his mechanical voice filled with hatred, the humans finally show themselves. Do you think killing me will end this war? Morrison removed his helmet and looked the Vextai leader in the eye. We do not want to kill you. We want you to understand something. And what is that? That your empire is already over. Look around you. Your fleet is scattered and bleeding. Your garrisons are falling to rebels armed with nothing but courage. And the knowledge that they do not have to be afraid anymore. You can fight us here and die, or you can accept that the galaxy has changed. Vorthak stared at the human colonel with his mechanical eyes. For 3,000 years, the Vextai had ruled through superior technology and overwhelming force. But this human stood before him carrying simple weapons and wearing basic armor, and somehow he had won. What do you want? Vorthak asked finally. We want you to order your fleets to stand down. We want you to recall your forces from occupied worlds, and we want you to help us build something better than empire. And if I refuse? Morrison smiled, but there was no cruelty in it. Then we will keep fighting until there are no Vextai left to rule anyone. But that is not what we want. We want you to join us. Before Vorthak could respond, Admiral Chun's voice came over the communication system. Attention Vextai Fleet. This is Admiral Chunwei of the Terran Alliance. Your Supreme War Master is in our custody and has agreed to discuss terms for ending this war. All hostilities will cease immediately. Across the solar system, Vextai ships stopped firing and waited for orders that would never come in the old way again on Earth. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to form something the galaxy had never seen before, a government based on cooperation instead of conquest. The Vextai, once the terror of the stars, found themselves invited to join as equals rather than rulers. War Prime Kethver, his pride broken but his honor intact, knelt before Admiral Chun in the ceremony hall where the new Galactic Confederation was being founded. We surrender, he said simply. We ask for your mercy, Chun helped the former enemy to his feet. We do not want your surrender, we want your partnership. The galaxy is big enough for all of us to live free. Years later, children from dozens of species played together on worlds that had once known only war. Human teachers worked alongside former Vextai warriors to build schools and hospitals. Trade ships carried goods and ideas between stars that had been cut off from each other for millennia. The name Vextai no longer brought fear to the galaxy. Instead, it represented something new, the possibility that even the worst enemies could become friends. If someone was brave enough to offer them a better way, and in the schools where young beings learned about the history of their